We've got the iPhone 15 and the 15 Plus, and we're unboxing them both. Starting off with the standard iPhone 15, which we got in what Apple is calling blue, even though it looks more white than anything. Inside the box, we have a reminder that this phone doesn't have a physical SIM slot, just like the iPhone 14. And then new for this year, there's the USB-C cable, so no more lightning cables going forward. And this new cable is actually pretty nice, with it being braided, so it should be a bit more durable, hopefully. But here is the phone itself. And obviously, one of the big new changes is it has a USB-C port instead of a lightning port. It's still kind of weird seeing USB-C on an iPhone, but it does enable some new features that we'll talk about in a sec. But at least visually, a bigger change I think is on the back, where Apple is finally using matte glass instead of the glossy finish on the iPhone 14 and before. Those phones would always pick up fingerprints like crazy and almost felt a little bit too grippy, whereas now the iPhone 15 stays looking clean and it just feels more premium, kind of like the Pro models do. It's not all matte glass though. The camera housing is now glossy, whereas before that part was matte, but I definitely prefer this setup. The aluminum frame has also been improved this year, with it being ever so slightly rounded at the edges. Before it was flat and kind of dug into your hand, making the iPhone 15 feel nicer to hold overall. But you know, most people put a case on their phone anyways, so the real most noticeable change here is that there's no longer a notch on the screen, with the standard models getting the same dynamic island that we first saw on last year's Pro models, complete with even the slightly thinner bezels. The screen is also now just as bright as the Pro models at up to 2000 nits, but unfortunately it's still only 60 Hz, which is kind of crazy in 2023, so it's not quite Pro, since Apple obviously needs to convince people to pay more for their other phones somehow. But to be fair to Apple, this year they did bring a much better camera system to the standard models. You still only have two cameras for wide and ultra wide, like that hasn't changed. But because the iPhone 15 has a new 48 megapixel sensor, you now have the option to crop in 2x without technically losing any optical quality. So it's kind of like having three cameras where you have the ultra wide, the standard, and now a 2x zoom, which technically makes this the biggest zoom range on a standard model ever. But arguably, I think a better new feature on the cameras is the new portrait option, where you don't have to remember to go into portrait mode to get that nice blur effect. With the iPhone 15s being smart enough to automatically capture depth information anytime it spots a person or a dog or a cat in your photos, and then lets you add those depth effects after the fact, which, you know, being someone who always forgets to go into portrait mode, this is something I definitely appreciate. Okay, moving on to the iPhone 15 Plus. We got it in the black color, and it actually looks black, and inside the box you have the same set of accessories. I was hoping that Apple would color match this cable to the phone like they do with their Macs, but it's the same braided cable as before, which, you know, is fine, and of course there's no USB-C brick included. I have to say though, this black here looks pretty nice. The matte glass, the black aluminum frame, even the color matched USB-C port itself give it this really cool smoked out look. In terms of features, this phone is almost exactly the same as the iPhone 15. It's the same A16 Bionic chip under the hood, the same camera system, and the same dynamic island. It's just a bigger screen at 6.7 inches compared to 6.1 inches, and then the other main difference is the Plus model here has a bigger battery. Now, when it comes to charging either of these phones, you're going to be using USB-C, of course, instead of Lightning. And, you know, while the charging speeds themselves haven't really changed, I was hoping it'd be faster, but that doesn't seem to be the case. USB-C does come with some pretty cool new features. For one, you can now use the iPhone 15 as a power bank to charge your other devices. So if you're ever in a pinch, you can actually charge your Apple Watch, your AirPods, or even a friend's iPhone with your iPhone. And then two, you can mirror your screen onto a 4K external display without needing any special adapters. And then finally, the third benefit of having USB-C on the iPhone is you can connect it to all sorts of peripherals, from external SSDs to even mixed reality glasses, where before you would always need special accessories to get them to work. It's nothing that Android phones haven't already had for years, but now it's on the iPhone too.